أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي صدق الله العلي العظيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Okay, we continue with our last surah of the series. Right, Surah al-Humaza means the scandal monger or the backbiter. It consists of 9 ayat, and it's part of the last 3 surahs that talk about the akhirah, the hereafter and the day of reckoning. So at Takathur, we remember it was about gathering of wealth and thinking you're going to last forever. Al-Asr is to do with time and how if we don't concentrate and focus on the 4 things of Iman and Amil Salihat and encouraging each other to do good and encouraging each other with patience, then we will be doomed. And then al-Humaza, which is covering another area of our social life, which is about our dealings with others. Could be people close to us, could be people outside of our family circles and in the broader society. But essentially there's 2 evils that are being spoken about in the first ayah, which is Humaza, which is the scandal monger, the person that backbites, who takes pride in reporting or relating stories that he or she may have heard and sometimes are not even verified, but we relay that message onto others as well about somebody else. Essentially, what we are doing to that person is we are sort of denigrating that person or humiliating him or her, or talking ill of the person to such an extent that it's almost akin to eating the flesh of a dead brother or sister. So that's the one thing. We do it behind their backs, the scandal monger, the Humaza part. And the Lumaza is in another category, which is where there may or may not be proof of what you're saying, but essentially you are slandering somebody else's reputation, whether sexually or otherwise. You are claiming that the person did something, and this may or may not be true. But either way, it is regarded as slander. So these are the 2 qualities that are talked of in the first ayah. Other words that relate to, or rather the meanings of Humaza, would be the backbiter, the gossip monger, the slanderous reviler. So it's all these connotations linked to Humaza and Lumaza. Then the second ayah says, Alladhi jama'a mala wa addada, who gathers. Jama is to get together, mal is wealth, and addada is to count it over and over, repeatedly. Right? So this is a third bad quality that some people have, is that they try to amass wealth, and they don't amass wealth for the good of it, but rather just for their own selfish aims and ambitions in their empires, rather than using it for the purposes of benefit to others around them. And after gathering this wealth, يَحْسَبُ أَنَّ مَالَهُ أَخْلَدًا, he thinks, that person who's gathering this wealth, that his wealth, مَالَهُ أَخْلَدًا, from the word Khalid, to make something live into perpetuity, that his wealth is going to make him immortal. So Allah says, Kalla, never, no, indeed. La yumbaghanna, this la and the noon at the end. So there's 3 ways of emphasizing this thing, that no, indeed, and definitely. Yumbaghanna means to be pushed or cast into the hotama. Now, hotama rhymes on the same scale like Humaza and Lumaza. So while we in this world do the Humaza and the Lumaza, but if we do that, remember that Allah has got a special sort of punishment also for that, which is the hotama, which is the crusher. And wama adraka mal hotama. So here's another question that Allah poses just to make you think a bit more about it. And then he gives you the answer, What is this crusher? It is a narullah al-muqada. Narullah, nar, is fire, and Allah is the fire of Allah. Al-muqada is set ablaze or kindled, or flames that are rising to such an extent. Allati tattali'u ala al-afida. The flames, allati is, here we had allazi earlier, which is to do with the male, who or which, and here it's allati, these flames which are, tattali'u is to rise above or to close upon, al-afida, around the hearts of these people. Fu'ad is one heart, afida is a plural. Innaha alayhim muqsada, innaha, surely it, right, alayhim muqsada, will close in on them, or will be sort of surrounding them. These people that are going to be put in this hutama, this crusher, and how it's going to be experienced is fi amadim mumaddada. Now, amad is the plural of umud. Umud is one column. Amad is many columns. Now, you imagine yourself in a confined space, like say in a lift, for instance, and imagine all four sides are like burning furiously, and you are in there, and it's like there's columns like engulfing you in the flame. Mumaddada is like outstretched. In other words, as far as the eye can see, above and below is this column of columns, multiple columns of flames around you, is the punishment for having done humaza, lumaza, and jama amal or addada, and not using it for the right purposes. So it's quite a serious surah, in the sense that, when you understand it, it definitely should change our perception of how we deal with people around us, and what we say about them, or when we should keep silent about things in particular, because sometimes it's a talking and letting our tongues loose that causes this trouble for us, not this world but also in the hereafter. Okay, so let's look at some of the key concepts that come out of this surah. Now, the word zulm, zulm means oppression or injustice. Here, zalim is the person that does the oppression, and the mazlum is the one on whom the oppression is done. So he's the oppressed, or she's the oppressed person as a result of the zulm that you are doing on that person. Now, zulm is quite a huge concept in our Sharia. And Sheikh Umar Suleiman has compiled a beautiful series of lectures on, and he's called it the 40 ahadith on zulm, or on oppression. Now, I had a good fortune of listening to some of these, and I found it mind-blowing in terms of how Allah preserves the integrity of human beings that He has created, and how we as fellow human beings don't even consider that one, but we throw it out of the window and we talk ill so easily. It comes off so slippingly off our tongues that it's amazing, that we indulge in so much of this, and yet Allah talks about how He's going to deal with people that oppressed others. And in this one is the verbal oppression, where you're actually talking ill of others. Obviously, you get zulm of another nature, where it can be psychological torture or other physical torture, but this is the verbal torture that you are sort of enunciating and giving wind to and articulating about others. So the humaza we mentioned is the backbiter, where we do it behind the back, where somebody is not here and we're talking ill about this person. That would be the humaza part of it. And the lumaza part is the slanderer, where sometimes there is evidence about the fact that this person is guilty of that, and what the slanderer will do is sort of say it in the open. They'll release tapes about it, they'll release a video about it, where there might be evidence as well, but at the same time, if there's evidence to it, obviously it must be handled in the right way, which is in a court of law. Doesn't give you the license to now go and, receive a message from somebody, you don't even check its veracity, and then you forward it to somebody else. In the meanwhile, that person has slandered somebody, and you unwittingly are falling into the same trap and slandering even more by sending it out to even more people. So in essence, because you're the chain in that link of slandering, all of them, every person that was involved in the slander is going to get their share of the punishment of doing this evil crime of doing slander. Then we talked about the khutama, which is just a crusher. Now, just like how you physically might have spoken ill about somebody, where you are sort of, in a sense, eating the flesh of that person's dead meat, right? Which in itself is such a horrendous act that if you were to like imagine, putting that kind of meat in your mouth. Now, the khutama is Allah's way of crushing you, your meat and your bones and your flesh one day in the future to such an extent that your body will be like literally broken or out of shape. So it's quite a serious consequence to this Humaza and Lumaza actions that we indulge in so easily in our lives. The Khalid we explained. Khalid is, something that lives forever. Now, it's not one of the 99 names of Allah. Allah is known by Al-Awwal and Al-Akhir, who is the first and the last. In other words, he is perpetual, but Khalid is not a reference to that quality in him, but we know him to be something that, an entity that will live forever, or that is alive forever. And Akhlada means to kind of make live forever. In other words, he thinks this person that does it is going to think that his wealth is going to make him live forever. In other words, he's going to guarantee his success. Sometimes he goes even further. He says, not even only in this world. He sometimes has this notion that, Allah was so kind to me. He's blessed me with so much wealth, and therefore I'm liked by him. And therefore I'll probably be even given the same thing in the hereafter. That's a false notion that some people have when they have too much wealth. They think that because Allah has not punished in any way now, and Allah has given more and more hope to this individual to carry on in his merry ways, but one day is one day. Allah will eventually catch up with this person's, notion of living an immortal kind of life of swimming in wealth and having enough, and he thinks he's going to even have that in the hereafter. But Allah says, Kalla, never. No, indeed, definitely not. And like I said, the Kalla and the La and this Noon or the Tajdeed at the end, these three things are like emphasis words for Yumbadhan. Yumbadha is to be cast into, right? So surely, definitely, most certainly, and without any doubt, he will be crushed, or he will be cast into or thrown into the khutama. So you can imagine how strong that one word is emphasizing the fact that persons are going to be, cast or thrown into the khutama. And wama adraka mal khutama, just a rhetorical question asking what will make you think, or what will make you understand, or what will show you what is this khutama. We had wama adraka in many other surahs, in Al-Qariya and others as well. It's a way of Allah saying a statement, then he asks a question about that statement, making you think about it, and then after that he gives you the answer. And in this answer is also very, very strong. He says, the khutama is Narullahil Muqada. Now this Narullah is a very, very, very strong idafa construction in Arabic. Now idafa is a genitive of possession, where you have two nouns next to each other. The first noun doesn't take an al, but is definite, even though it's because of the one single dhamma at the end of naru. And then Allah is obviously definite. So this is like the fire of Allah. Now you can, if you want to say just a fire from Allah, you will say narun minallah, which is like ordinary fire, just a fire from Allah, right? Which maybe, although it will still be intense, but maybe not so serious as what this one is. This one is Narullah. It's a very specific fire, kindled by Allah Himself. In other words, He created this fire specially. And Muqada, He's set it ablaze. He's set this flames alight by virtue of how He can only do it, right? So He's made a special, as it were, gift to people who are indulging in Humaza, Lumaza, and that. He's made a special fire set in such a strong, intense blaze And this blaze, allati tattali, will rise up or spread over the hearts of people, these individuals. In other words, their skin will be melted off, their bones will be crushed, and what will be left is that that heart inside that Allah gave our ribcage to protect ourselves from the outside. It will be all exposed as a result of this fire that people will be engulfed into. Mm. And then it says, Innaha, surely, alayhim, around it, or around them, mu'sada, it will close in. Now, isad is a noun, mu'sada is a constricted animal shed. In other words, if you put, like, say, if you look at a farm or farmyard, right, where, like, if you've got a whole lot of fowls and hens, you normally build like a cage for them, or fence or mesh or whatever, right? Or if it's sheep, you build something out of rocks or bricks or whatever. So it's a constricted animal shed where whoever or whatever is inside cannot go out. Right? The idea is to keep that thing locked in. And this is what this fire is going to be doing. This hotama is going to be like that constricted shed, a narrow like container that's going to keep the person inside with no relief whatsoever, no way of escape, no emergency door, nothing. So whichever way he or she wants to try and get out, he will not be able to get out. Huh? And then it carries on. So also this mu'sada can also mean like if you're boiling something on a stove, it's extreme fire, right? And when you put the pot lid on top of the pot, it keeps that steam and that thing inside the container of the pot bubbling or burning or cooking or whatever the case is, to an extent that that lid, if you have to lift it up, obviously you release the energy that's built up into the pot. But in this case, the pot is put, the lid is kept closed on that mu'sada, that container. So keeping the heat inside in a constricted area. So it's the agony is even like far superior or far more than you can even imagine. And then on top of it, the last line says, Fi amadim mumaddada. Amad, we said, is a plural of amud. Amud is one column or pillar. So the pillar could be made out of wood, or pillar could be made out of metal, anything that burns and keeps heat in, right? So it's going to be these kind of columns surrounding us, mumaddada, outstretched, like in sort of multiple layers and in heights that you cannot imagine. Now, mumaddada is like almost like wa'addada. Can you see this wa'addada in line 2? Can you see a sort of a similarity between somebody having wealth and counting it over, and here there's columns that's going to be outstretched, that's just going to be engulfing this person. Then if you look at some of the rhyme schemes in the surah, you get Humaza, Lumaza, and Hotama on the same scale. There's 4 letters. So the first word or first letter always having a dhamma, then it's followed by 2 fathas, and then a kasra, kasatin, or whatever the last, right? Humaza, Lumaza, and Hotama. You can see that this al is just the definite particle there, right? But so those are 3. Even then we have another rhyme scheme of, like almost, this one here, where you have muqada, afida in a certain way, muqada, which is rhyming like with muqada, and then mumaddada as well. So there's a second kind of rhyme scheme in this description of what hotama is. Right, so I've covered most of the understanding of the surah. There are maybe a few things more that can be said, like the word wailun, just as a matter of interest, is used 27 times in the Quran. In one other surah, it is used in 10 occasions. In other words, in 10 ayah of that surah, it's used so many times repeatedly. Now, 2 surahs of the Quran begin with it, which is this one, Wailul likulli humaza, and then the other one, Wailul lil mutaffifin. Mutaffifin are those who deal in when they weigh something, they like to get full value of the weight that they've paid for whatever they're buying. But yet, when they are in a selling position, they then jump over the scales a bit and give a bit less measure to the person buying something out of them. In other words, they are the people that want to sort of wheel and deal, and when it suits them, they want to talk about justice and fair play and equality and all the rest of it. But when it applies to others, then they want to undercut and give less value than it's worth. So even there, that waylul lil mutaffifin, Allah is saying, woe be on those who indulge in this kind of financial misdemeanors or ill-conceived dealings that they shouldn't be involved in. Right? Whale is also, as a noun, is a famous valley in the hellfire. In the lowest pit, some deep down, is called whale. So it's like the worst form of destruction be on you. Now, whale, the way Allah uses it is Allah curses. It's a very angry surah in the sense that he starts off by saying, curse be on those who are Humaza al-Humaza. Right? So whale it's got all those connotations, but very, very significant and profound in the way that one word in itself conveys all these meanings. And then it goes on to likulli. Kulli means each, every, like one person. So it's not, the way Humaza and Lumaza works is it starts with one person starting off a false messaging or a false idea, or he heard something from somebody else and is now relaying it to somebody else. So it starts off with one person. And before you know what, one person says it to another one person, then it multiplies to another 2, another 5, another 10, and before it goes, it kind of can go viral as well. Right? So in that sense, every person that is guilty of this in the chain of narration, in the standard, as it were, of narrating this thing over and over again, is going to be accountable for his or her own speech. His tongue is going to be a witness to what he said. His ears are going to be a witness to what he heard. And all that is going to come out on the day of judgment. And the Hotama is waiting for these kinds of people. Right now, just to explain Humaza, Lumaza a bit more. Humaza is obviously when you talk in their absence, and Lumaza is in their face, you talk about it. And you have these kind of people. Some who are overtly concerned about others. They make gossip a habit. Their mind is only filled with petty issues. They don't know any big issues that they can talk about. And sometimes by talking about ill of others, what you are actually doing is you're hiding your own flaws by picking on others' weaknesses. So essentially you're breaking someone's self-worth. It's almost like you're trying to break the Kaaba, in terms of that house of worship and the individual and how we're supposed to have a dignified view of that person's self-worth. We are trying to crush that person's self-worth, his image in society, and basically his name and everything that goes with him. It can go even further where we curse someone or we laugh at them. Now this is also we do this also sometimes. We take pride in finding faults to such an extent till we find a flaw and we point it out. It's like we kind of go into a person's background just to find a mistake he or she made maybe 5, 10, 20 years ago, and we then avoid all the good things that a person may have done, but we find that one flaw and we hone in on it and we make a big deal out of it. Right? It also extends to any condescending manner of address, where you look down on somebody in a sort of belittling way, or harsh body language, or even when we use vulgar words and we address somebody. All this is part of the Humaza Lumaza thing. Right? As far as the one who gathers wealth, the person can be rich but is not charitable. He also, because of his wealth, sometimes he thinks he's got a license now because he controls the shots and he calls the shots, so that he can concentrate on other people's flaws. And he projects onto others to cover sometimes his or her own mistakes or flaws. Right? And the Addada, we talked about the fact that he counts it over and over and derives joy in it. And okay, let's look at mal now. This concept of mal is generally just ordinary wealth. Here it's indefinite. There's no al on it, right? So just wealth in general. whether it's money or other companies or other assets or things you've inherited, any kinds of wealth, and you have worth to it, and then you count it over and over. Right? Now, this is quite amazing here about what is this mal of financial muscles as it relates to maybe the big corporates. Right? Let's talk about big the companies we have around us. Right? Some of them are guilty of using child labor. Right? They go further, they enlist the support of a mafia to protect their interests. So they have hitmen to make sure that they are the only people standing and the others all fall by the wayside. They buy out politicians to silence opposition to them or to their ways. They avoid their own negative publicity by broadcasting others' negativeness and whatever else they're doing that's not right. They also go to the extent of paying marketing companies to secure their brand, even at the expense of tarnishing others' brands. Yeah? Some world leaders, and Trump is one of them, build their empire on credit. They live on credit, and they do not care about the future. Right? And they have the notion that future generations will deal with the debt on the interest, and I must just live the life now. My children and grandchildren will have to face the debt burden that I've put, and I want to live for the day. We go further. Sometimes even in the religious circles, we have reformers who try to make fun about some things that are near and dear to others, like for instance the hijab or the beard. Some people wear this or do this out of love for the Prophet Sunnah, right? And it's not to be taken lightly and made fun of, right? We can't use words like here's a ninja coming down the road or whatever. We talk like that sometimes, and we have to be careful of the words we use, because there's maybe a lot of value that somebody else has placed into it, and obviously they get the dignity out of this. We take an example from Aisha radiallahu anha, the beloved wife of the Prophet, when the hijab revelation came across, immediately she tore her apron and covered her head. Right? So she implemented that revelation as soon as she heard it. So in other words, the moment she heard of something that she wasn't doing and became part of the Sharia, there was no question about it. You just had to do it, and she just did it instantly. Right? So likewise, when we see people wearing a turban or something else, or wearing some kind of dress, some people are doing it out of genuine love for the Prophet ﷺ, and we need to respect that. And if we have nothing nice to say, at least keep our mouths shut. That's the least we can do, because some people are getting reward for it, and by you trying to make fun of it, with you putting yourself in the category of Humaza and Lumaza, and the Hotama is waiting for you. Right, so Ayah 1 is about others, Ayah 2 is about selfishness and gaining of wealth, and then the Yahsabu, sometimes you stand back and you think and you make a psychological analysis, and you talk, you've got this false ideas in your head that you're going to last forever, and sometimes we go even further, we build monuments about ourselves. Right? For instance, we want to be known for the fact that we've built the tallest building in so-and-so place, or we've started off the largest endowment and it's helping so many people. So we mustn't do things for name and fame. Right? That's the other thing about this mal. Do it and spend, and the best of spending of wealth is you do it in silent way, where the right hander shouldn't know what the left hand is also doing about it. Walid ibn Mughira, we've spoken about him many times. He took great pains to point out the flaws of others. Right? When he was asked to comment about the Quran, we know he frowned, he looked away, and then he came to the conclusion that it was magic. So in other words, he told the line of the Quraysh. Right? Now, also what happens in our society is sometimes we have poets and we have comedians who use this approach. Very often they condescend, right? They refer to the flaws of others, and sometimes they talk about this openly in their shows, and people clap and laugh, and we all have a good laugh sometimes about this. We've all heard of jokes of there was an American and a Russian and an Indian that does this, and then at the end, two of those sort of stereotypes are painted in a bad light, and the one stereotype is painted in a good light, or very cunning and shrewd, or whatever. So we must avoid even those kind of jokes, in terms of being clear from this kind of evil that's being described in this particular surah. All right, I think this I've covered, so I won't go through it We talked about the crusher. It's a severe punishment awaiting the two crimes that people have done. We talked of how severe the Narullah is. It's very unique, and it's a fire kindled by Allah Himself, and it's going to be, overwhelming us. All right, so I think that is the surah. I'll end on that note with the surah itself. I just want to say a few more things as we part. You know, all of you have been through this course. We've now understood hopefully a little more of the 23 surahs that we read daily in our salah. Now, one way I find of improving concentration is in salah is what I do is I focus on, say, 2 surahs every week. Like Al-Fatiha, you must by now know very well, but if that's one of the ones that you still don't know, I suggest you go back to the notes, go back to the video recording, and just recap on it, because we did it a long time ago. But that's one that, because we read in every salah, every rakah, you should know what that means about guidance and all the rest of it, right? And what we should also try and do is, besides Surah Fatiha, then you choose 2 other surahs, like say Alam Tara and Lila fi Quraysh, for instance, as a pair, because they follow hand in hand as well. Look at what the notes say, what the words mean, and then when you read it, try and, if your average 2 rakat salah was done in 2 minutes, try and aim to make it 3 minutes or 4 minutes. Spend a bit more time on the musalla. Concentrate, read it slowly, so you say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Think of what that means. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Praise and shukr belongs to Allah, the Rabb, the Master, the Sustainer of Al-Alameen, all the worlds, all the creations out there. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, the most beneficent, the most merciful, Maliki Yawmiddin, like that. So you go to every ayah slowly, read it in Arabic, and just try and think, what was this thing? What does it mean in English? Where did we have these words come before or after? Which other surah has the word Rabb in? Just try and concentrate just on that surah that you're reading. Then when you start Alam Tara, same way. Alam Tara kayfa fa'ala rabbuka bi ashabil fil. Have you not seen how Allah dealt with the companions of the elephants? Who were the companions of the elephants? How many were they? Where were they going? Why were they going? All the rest of it. Right? So like that, if you focus and you read that, say 2 rakats, always with Alam Tara, Lila fi Quraysh as a pair, for a week, and you internalize the meanings of Alam Tara and Lila fi Quraysh in that way. Then the following week you start with Arayta Alladhi and Inna Atayna and do the same thing. Try and work out for yourself what those ayah mean, and how it applies to my life, and how can I change, and the impact it can have, and focus. And like that you'll find growth going forward. You choose any surahs, recap first, and go through it, and then purposely read those in every 2 rakat sunnah or 2 rakats for whatever of every salah for that week, so that it becomes second nature to you. Right? And obviously the notes and video copies are available for recap at any time. It's all there. It will not be taken off, so you can rely on it and share it with whoever you like as well. And the last word from my side is it is a legacy living project, so I've dedicated this time and energy to put this course together for you. I hope you've benefited and you've enjoyed it, and you've learned something, and you've got some life lessons from there. Then I want to just cover, when we end the Quran, this is a beautiful dua to make. Allahumma arhamni bil Quran waj'alhu li, and it make the Quran the Imam, which means a leader for me, wa nur, and a light for me, and huda, guidance for me, and rahma, and a mercy for me. So this is what the Quran is about. It's essentially a leader, a light in this darkness of life. It's a guide at all times, and a mercy for all humanity. Allahumma dhakkirni minhu ma nasitu. Allah, remind me of what I've forgotten about it. Wa allimni minhu ma jahiltu, and teach me of what I was ignorant or I didn't know about it. Wa razukni, and bless me. Tilawatu ana al-layl, its recitation in the wee hours of the night. Wa atraf al-nahar, and at the ends of the day. Waj'alhu li hujjatan, and make it an evidence in my favor, Ya Rabbal Alameen, O Lord of the world. So beautiful dua, that it's nice dua to even make after every salah, even before you sleep. And let's try and make the Quran, even, give 10 minutes to half an hour every day in our life. Create a slot in your life to say, every night from 9 o'clock to 9:30 before I sleep, this is what I'm going to be spending time on. Just exposing myself to the Quran, understanding it, imbibing it, listening to other YouTube videos or whatever. Learn as much as you can, because I've just touched is the tip of an iceberg. There's a whole lot of things underneath and below it that obviously will add more embellishment to your understanding and your appreciation of the Quran. All right, so these are some YouTube videos you can share, you can look at on your own time. All right, so in conclusion, I just want to thank you all for staying the course and undertaking this journey for discovery and reflection with me. And obviously all mistakes made in these presentations are mine alone and not the respected scholars consulted, in particular Ustad Norman, as well as some of the Mufassirun that he's consulted and I've also consulted. And may Allah make this Quran a source of guidance, and may we become true ambassadors for Islam. And let's also always ponder and reflect and read Iqra Bismi, read the Quran intently and with purpose. Don't just make it a reading when we read it khatams of people that have died, because the Quran is not actually for the dead. It's a book that's alive, and it's for us to improve our lives. Right? So please, let's read it and imbibe the messages and practice what it tells us. All right, may you accept all our efforts, and I appreciate your time as well. It's been a long 23 sessions that we've had, but I'm sure you've benefited. All right, so we end once more with Wal Asr, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, a reminder, Wal Asr, by the token of time, Innal insana lafi khusr, surely mankind is all at a loss, illa alladhina amanu, except those who believe, have iman, wa amilu salihat, and they do good deeds, wa tawasaw bil haqq, and they encourage each other with truth and honesty and stand by the truth at all times, wa tawasaw bis sabr, and encourage each other with patience.